Permaculture is it's a design science that's based on ecology. So ecology is the science of studying how an ecosystem works, basically how energy flows through an ecosystem and how all of the different organisms relate to each other. And so permaculturists have looked at the ways that ecosystems function and then have taken sort of generalized concepts from how an ecosystem works and turned them into design tools that we can apply to human systems, society, so that we can build societies that function the way that an ecosystem functions, because right now almost everything about our society is breaking the rules that ecosystems follow, which means we're destroying all of the ecosystems on the planet and undermining our own possibility for survival.
Thanks. So, in your own life, how could you describe an example or a scenario where you might be able to demonstrate or explain to an audience a principle, for example, of permaculture that you apply directly in your life and are able to practice? What's something that something kind of tangible that we could kind of just chew on, food for thought?
That's a good question.
We can come back to that if you want.
No, it's fine. I'll give the example that comes to my mind is the example of my business, right?
Okay.
My business, it's a business, so we have to follow all of the same rules that other businesses follow. And it's not a nonprofit, so it's technically a for-profit business. But the mission of the business is to build sustainable community where I live, in the lower Susquehanna River Valley. The mission of the business isn't to pile up capital. So I make a living through the business, and a handful of other people make a living through the business, and then a handful of other people get professional training as permaculturists by working part-time or by taking advantage of some other apprenticeship opportunities. Then we provide classes, which means literally at this point for me, thousands of other people have taken my classes and are learning how to better their own communities. I make friends with those students. Some of those students have become colleagues that I have work for sometimes, or they hire me. So our business as a social enterprise is functioning like an ecosystem. It's building community. It's providing basic resources to the people who run the business. And then those communities reinforce the possibility that those resources that I need, continue to flow. So it's a mutual relationship between me and my business and the community that I'm trying to build. And they're both building each other up.
Thanks.
Sure.
And for your business, like you said, it's not a profit, or it's not a nonprofit organization. How can you how could you encourage other people to maybe try and capture that model of co-creative community building through an entrepreneurial endeavor?
Yeah. I mean, the first, I think, and most obvious thing that I would say about that is that if your mindset is that the goal of your business is to stockpile as many resources for you as possible, then you got to throw that mindset out, because that's the mindset that's destroying the planet. A socially responsible business has to identify a problem area or a need in the local community and then create a service or a product that provides or that fixes that problem or meets that need. And the business has to find a way to make that service or product cheap enough that it's available to the people who need it, but it also has to be a price that's fair enough that the people running the business can do so sustainably. But if your goal is to live in a McMansion and make $250,000 a year, you can't run a socially responsible business. I don't need $250,000 a year. I could make $30,000 to $40,000 a year and have a business that is continually empowering me to be recreating the home economy that was the basis of the global economy until the last 75 years. So I'm generating a lot of my own resources, or my neighbors are generating a lot of what I need. Then why do I need $250,000 a year? I can be a wealthy person without a crap load of money.
Cool, thanks. I don't know, do you have time for one more question?
Sure, one more.
Okay, so what would you tell somebody who has no idea about even social responsibility? Why is something like permaculture important to an individual and the community at large? Well, why should we care?
Sure. So ecology is part of a new wave of sciences that are based on something called systems analysis. Quantum physics is part of it. Cybernetics is part of it. There have been amazing advances in medicine recently based on systems theory. And what the scientific community is starting to learn through deep observation of ecosystems is that cooperation, not competition, is actually the basis for survival, for long-term survival of species and whole ecosystems. And our modern civilization is built on competition, not cooperation, which means our whole entire global civilization is built on a principle that doesn't work anywhere else in nature, which means it's doomed. And so social responsibility is not just some nebulous ethic that we pulled out of thin air based on religion or people wanting to be nice to each other. There's actually scientific evidence for social responsibility and the development of ethics of like sharing being the building blocks of strong ecological communities. So cultures that are built on like mutualism and sharing are actually manifesting an ecological phenomenon that humans were programmed. We were programmed to be communal and to live together and support each other. We were not programmed to outcompete each other and destroy the entire global ecosystem.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
I kind of one question just came up to me, and this quote that I read out of the book that you actually referred, Native Science, that I've been reading, really kind of captured my imagination and my sort of vision. But the book describes science as mainly a narrative story about the things of nature and the nature of things, is how I'd put it. And I love that. I think it's beautiful. It kind of captures that paradox of interplay between environment and observer. How does a narrative, or what is the role of narrative in maybe your own life, or like with what you're doing in your local community, and maybe what's your vision for that as like an author or your own authority?
Sure. So I'll start by saying the one thing about that book, Native Science, that strikes me the most deeply is that the author, Gregory Kahete, constantly talks about that the goal of science in indigenous communities was the attainment of something that he calls coming to know. Whereas in modern science, the goal is the actual acquisition of knowledge. He says that the goal in indigenous science was to be on the pathway to knowledge. The knowledge isn't the goal. Being on the pathway to knowledge is the goal, and that reflects the idea that there is no hard and fast finite knowledge about anything. There's only this constant process of evolving and changing, right? And that's a completely different narrative than what we have in our society. So for me, locally, I would say that I try to manifest that just in constantly espousing this idea of community. Like, just because we live in the same neighborhood, does that mean that we actually share community? Just because we're family, does that mean that we're actually community? What is community? And to me, community is a group of people who come together and support that effort to be on the path, so that whatever pressures, whatever changes come down the pike, we have built up a resiliency in our community based on shared wisdom and shared process, that we can take on unforeseen challenges. But if all we think is, that if I acquire this and I acquire this and I acquire this, then I'll be good to go, and I don't need all you people. That's nonsense. Mm-hmm. Because something unforeseen will come down the pike and just knock everything that you have over. And I would rather be starving with 50 friends than starving alone. I guess that's all I'll say about that.
Cool.